Before we begin, we'd like to ask that everyone, please, if you've logged on with your phone number, or if you just logged on with your first name, if you could just put what or community you represent, your name and your community on your screen. So in order to do that, if you hover on your name, you'll see on the top right, or your picture, you'll see on the top right is a little blue button that you with 3 dots on it. If you hover on that, it'll say rename, and then you can change your name as it is shows on the screen.
One other housekeeping thing is that this meeting is being recorded, so just let everyone know that. And it is important that you please keep yourself muted if you're not going to be talking, because that will pop up on the screen if you are speaking and it's just making noise or whatever.
So if everybody's here, we'll go ahead and get started. We'll start off with the pledge, and then we'll do a roll call. Okay. Everybody please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Nice touch, Charles.
What's that?
Nice touch. Last time we did it without a flag. Good for you.
Candace, if you want to go ahead and do a roll call.
Okay, I sure will. I'm going to list the name of your communities or municipalities, and then if you can say here, and then please let me know your name as well. Okay. Lake County.
Dwayne Alberson here.
LaPorte County.
Jay Sullivan here.
Okay. Porter County.
Take pictures. No.
Crown Point.
Here, Bob Thompson.
Jenny Burgess, Crown Point.
Jenny Bridges. Thank you. East Chicago. Gary.
AJ Bittner, City Gary.
Hammond.
Mark Gordish, Hammond.
Hobart.
Bill Graylicks here with Hobart.
Lake Station.
Good morning, Adrian Vera here, Chief of Staff.
Thank you. City of LaPorte.
Hi, Sarah Nimitz.
Tom Casey, planner.
And Tom. Yep.
I'm sorry, I had Sarah Nimitz and who?
Tom Casey, city planner.
Okay,
Beth West Transport.
okay. Michigan City.
Shannon Eason.
And Skylar York.
I'm sorry, was there another one?
And Skylar York.
Thank you. Portage.
Sandy Cole.
Valparaiso.
Michael Jabo, and I believe Beth Trader also.
Beth here. Hi, guys.
Hi, good morning. Thank you. Whiting. Beverly Shores, Burns Harbor, Cedar Lake, Chesterton,
Mark Odell.
Dune Acres, Dyer, Griffith,
Rick Kodopasek, Public Works Director.
Hebron, Highland, Kingsford Heights, Couts, La Crosse, Long Beach, Lowell, Maryville, Michiana Shores, Munster, New Chicago, Ogden Dunes, Pines, Porter, Potawatomi Park, Cherville,
Hewitt and Township are present.
thank you, Schneider, St. John, Trail Creek, Wanata, Westville, Winfield,
Nick Bellar here.
thank you, Porter Township, Union Township. That concludes roll call, Charles.
Are there any other guests?
Yes.
I'm a guest. Kevin Brightsky, NERC, TPC Chair.
This is Don Oliphant, Christopher Burke. I thought Rick Everly is on the line for Cedar Lake, but if he's not, I'll speak on behalf of them.
And this is Ty Warner from
Chris Murphy with Structure Point.
Amy Blaker with Lockmuller Group.
Wing Lau with American Structure Point.
Eric Wolverton, American Structure Point.
Jake Damerel, Butler, Fairman, and Seifert.
Trisha Nugent, DLZ.
Mike Duffy, DLC.
Did we get everybody? Okay. Did everybody get the responses that I sent out, or the review that I sent out yesterday? I know it was kind of last minute, but we're not going to necessarily discuss it, but I just want to make sure that everybody got a chance to look at it or got a copy of it. Basically what I did was I put all the applications and put them with the scores, tiers they are, what kind of projects they're going to be in, and the rankings and any comments from the LPA according to your application, like whether or not it can be phased, what kind of funding they're looking for as far as PE, right-of-way, construction funds, and then also comments from myself, whether this is say a legacy project, whether this is a safety project, and whether it benefits several different communities, and so on and so forth. And there's, in some cases, there's a question or two on there. If you did get that, let me know, and I will be more than happy to share that with you. out yesterday. I wanted to get it out earlier, but didn't. But we're not necessarily discussing that today. We are discussing today is the application, and in the application, and I send everyone a copy of the application, but if you pull up your application under the program and project types, we're going to be discussing the project type funding and the targets per year, as well as discussing some of the tiers. And this came about a few weeks ago during an internal meeting. We realized that some of the things that we've said are important to us, and this is namely new roads. This is where it came up, was under new roads or roadway expansions. We've have said in the past these are important, and we will continue to fund these, but they have to fall in a tier 3 category, which has no funding at all, and also is at the very bottom of the list. I don't want to say bottom of the barrel, but it is close to it. It's at the bottom of the list. So therefore, anything above it, anything in, for instance, in roadway improvement is a tier 2 for the most part. And roadway expansion or new roadway is the tier 3. So with that, keeping that in mind, we could have a project that scored, say, 10 points in a roadway improvement, and it would get funding over a new roadway project. We don't feel that is fair. And yes, that should have been picked up a year ago in the continuous improvement working group, but it didn't. For some reason that got missed, and so we're trying to correct that today. Today I'm planning on there being one vote. I'm expecting to be one vote today, and that would be anything that the outcome of this meeting would hopefully would go to a vote to the TPC for the TPC to vote also. So if everyone looked at that, the scoring tiers, like I said, roadway expansion in quality of place is a tier 3, as well as in new roadways is a tier 3. All new roadways a tier 3, and they're eligible for funding, but there's no funding targets. I'd like to open this up for discussion currently. Any comments, questions?
Well, I'll make a comment. This is Bob Thompson, Porter County. I mean, I would like to see the new roadways get out of tier 3. I mean, obviously I'm going to be prejudiced because I got Willow Creek Road extension that's in there. But there's other communities that do have important extensions of roads and new roadways that get in, and these are important to these communities. And I just think it needs to get out of tier 3 and being looked at fairly as a project, especially after a number of studies done by NERC has shown a number of these corridors are important for relieving congestion and also air quality.
Are there any suggestions? We move them up to tier 2?
Charles, this is David Wright. I'm trying to
recall during the continuous improvement meetings whether or not we had settled on looking at new roadway construction as a question of whether or not those projects were transformative. And if they are transformative, then we would take it to the TPC, or we would give them some additional consideration because of their importance, even though we are not looking at overvaluing new road construction. I don't have my notes in front of me. I haven't been able to track down that particular entry. I'm just trying to figure out what we had decided on when this conversation, I believe it came up during our continuous improvement projects. I could be wrong. Like I said, this is just cranial recollection. What did we decide on?
Well, we decided that anything over $6 million was transformative. So that's how we kind of set it as the transformative projects. I don't believe we talked about. I don't think we talked about new roadways in per se, but we felt that anything over $6 million in and itself would be transformative, and that should go have an extra question asked. And I thought it was supposed to go to the TPC, but upon further recollection or looking at my notes, it was only supposed to stay within that committee and be asked. And then it's actually in the programming rules that number 19, any project that exceeds $6 million for the engineer's estimate, construction's engineer's estimate, it cannot be broken down into smaller phases, shall be deemed a transformative project and will be reviewed separately from other projects in the NOFA by that topical committee that is reviewing that project type.
Hi, it's Sarah from City of LaPorte. I do think that this should just be moved into tier 2 if that's at all possible. It almost feels like it was just an oversight. Am I understanding that correctly? That it wasn't brought up for discussion and therefore ended up in tier 3. And now we're where we are, needing to sort of rectify that. If that's what I understand to be the case somewhat, I would like to see this moved into tier 2. Yeah.
I believe during the first NOFA under this new set of rules, new highway construction was not given a high priority because of the need to maintain an emissions budget, and B, concentrate highway investment on reconstruction and repair. If we are going to make a move to tier 2 or any kind of move for capacity improvements, it's got to be justified in light of that. Is there a reason why we're doing it? If it's arbitrary or capricious or at all not justified, it could expose NERC to some scrutiny.
I think David's correct with his assessment. The problem we're having is the amount of money we're discussing. Addressing those projects as whether they're regionally significant. They're certainly transformative for the amount of money, but in view of the limited amount of monies we really have, we had to address these in such a way that we could finish them, that we didn't have legacy projects, and that was NERC's liability.
Well, this is Phil Graylick with the City of Hobart. I think they should be tier 2. I think that the future of the region is going to require the connections of these arterials and major collectors. Hobart does have one application in right now that, didn't score great, but we as a community need the relief roads constructed parallel to US 30 for that South Lake Mall area to remain economically viable. And, other new roads are needed. And I agree with Bob that we did the regional corridor study, and yet it seems we're not funding those, and I think we need to be.
Right.
I'll agree about the growth. I mean, we're going to continue to grow, and communities and counties need the money to be able to extend the services that are necessary, the expansions. I mean, I'm going to go to bat for Craig Phillips here with his new road that he's got with the extension of that road. It's all because of growth that St. John has experienced. And if we can't do that, it's going to hurt.
Yeah, I agree with Bob and Craig. The one thing that we need to do as an NERC agency, I feel, is figure out where this growth is going to be taking place and to justify it too. We ran into that with this NOFA, trying to figure out how to disperse funds. And we had people arguing, well, we have development here planned, but under what guise is being planned at this time? Is it something real? I kind of reflect on the intermodal planning in Gary right now, that it's in the plan, but how long is it going to be before that comes to fruition? And that's part of the investment strategy, I think, here. So I would support it being moved up if we put it in conjunction with and working with the city planners as far as where additional construction and development's going to really take place.
And
Charles.
county planners too, right, Kevin?
That goes without saying. Thanks, Bob.
Charles, Mike Jabo here. You know, I certainly hear the cry, you know, people got new developing areas and they got to serve that. I get that. Is there a way that there can be a measurement on the new projects to see how impactful they really are? I mean, in fairness, among themselves competing each other, how do we determine which new road project in the region? If it was just new projects, how do we determine which one's best suited for the entire region? I mean, certainly there's modeling that NERC's done and all that could help support their causes.
Well, I think we had intended to, I think we were intending that new roadways, if they were a legacy project, would get an upper hand. It would get an extra boost. Apparently, maybe we didn't put enough on the legacy. And maybe legacy projects should have more opportunity, should have a leg up to continue with their project. And maybe that's where we fell short on this. I mean, in addition to it being a tier 3 and
doesn't NERC have a model that proves the value of these projects? I mean, they're there for a reason. How do you quantify that, Charles?
I don't know of a model. Scott might know better than I. We did do the corridor study back in 2016, where we stated which ones are important to the region. And then we kind of fell short on following up with that statement.
Isn't some of this already in the scoring criteria, whether or not it connects to arterials? If it's in a study like the regional corridor study, multiple communities, if you have support from other communities, because these connections are going to be important to our neighbors as well. And so some of this is already there. I agree with Mike. It would be nice to model it and see what the impacts are. And maybe we need to tweak the scoring criteria, you know, for the next NOFA in that regard.
And we will. I I think I sent out last week, I believe I sent out to everyone a questionnaire with, actually it wasn't a questionnaire, it was just a spreadsheet with comments that I had garnered during the topical committees. Then I asked everyone to add to those, and I received a few comments back. I think probably 4 to 6 people had responded back to me saying, and please add these items. So yeah, our continuous improvement, working group is going to take those and continue on with that. Adding those comments and correcting some of those there's some loopholes in there that there's always going to be loopholes that someone's going to find. And so we'll work on closing up those loopholes. And one of the questions I did add, and in fact I added it this morning, was maybe we didn't add enough points for the legacy projects. Maybe the legacy projects should have gotten more points to give them an extra leg up. But, you know, legacy projects aren't all that bad. You got to have projects in the pipeline to keep going. Whether or not the project is ready to is up to the LPA whether or not they're going to submit for an application. And but my thinking was that just because you're a legacy project, you shouldn't automatically be guaranteed in this NOFA. Because there are some projects that aren't ready. And then maybe there are some projects that could wait, that would do good to wait. But we noticed that, again, that it didn't seem to, we noticed that the amount of points that you got for being a legacy project didn't really affect the scores that much.
Well, I would just say that I don't think all of these projects are legacy projects necessarily, because there are communities do need new roadways that have never gotten funding before that are just now becoming part of plans and studies that are being done. So I think we need to think of those too.
Right. Right.
If I could, I think we need to go back in history and the old scoring system, in which case many communities didn't qualify or were never going to get their project funded because we used AADT, and the smaller communities during their times of growth never could score high enough to get in the NOFA, in the TIP. And you know, once we got a project, and I'm speaking primarily at Kennedy Avenue, into the TIP and into the funding schedule via the old scoring system, we changed the scoring system, and now we can't score enough points, or we are tiered in a lower category that prevents us from being funded. You know, in 2011, when our first phase of Kennedy Avenue was approved, the town of Cherville committed many dollars to the preliminary work needed. We are still in that process in the environmental process in that, which is very long-winded, as most of you know. And we need some relief from NERC in this. We have, for the past 9 years, been expecting all phases of our project to be phased in. The scoring system has changed now, and you know, we've got a significant investment in this.
And we recognize that.
That is why I
we're
believe
here
that
today.
the legacy projects need priority.
So then, to keep moving, if we move new roadways and roadway expansions from tier 3 to tier 2, I don't think we need just look at new roadways and new bridges, new roadways, tunnels, move them up from tier 3 to tier 2. I don't believe these other items under new roadways, such as truck parking facilities, construction of minor collectors, surface transport infrastructure to facilitate port linkages. I don't believe those necessarily need to move up, as well as quality of place, roadway expansion could move up. And I think that's what we're mainly talking about, is just roadway expansion as well as new roadway, bridge, and tunnel construction to move up from tier 3 to tier 2.
Charles,
Yes.
since you've done the numbers, I took your table and resorted it out, but when I look at the SDBG projects all lined up, can we put this a little reality to this as far as the new projects? Is that how much money are we really talking about in 2 fiscal years? And, you know, you've got over $100 million worth of projects here.
Right.
And by my resorting the table, I think only one of those new projects would even make the tip. Is that a fair assessment?
Well, yes. However, the way NDOT does things, we do have some flexibility as to far what bucket we want to pull from.
I mean, the bottom line is, you said you got $20 million a year for 2 years, right? Roughly.
Each year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then how many years do we got to fill? I mean, what's at stake here? 2 years, so $40 million.
We have 2 years. We might have some additional funds in 2023 and 24. And a lot of this depends upon a new infrastructure bill, because right now our funding has been frozen. 2021 limits. So when I say there's $20 million, roughly $20 million, that's because our funding has been frozen at that limit.
Then,
And
go
we
ahead.
get a new infrastructure. I'm expecting that to expand. However, until we get that, I can't account on that.
Then a final comment's not going to help today, but it's obvious, you know, we got competing between new projects and taking care of what we had. I think both are equally important. And I think we need to come up with some mechanism to show how they go, because if you dump all your money into new projects, then you don't take care of what you have. And if you take care of what you have, then you don't have the opportunity for new projects. It's got to be some kind of balance.
Right. So, and if we do allocate some funds to this, to new roadways, then we're going to be taking some funds away from somewhere else. So, you know, we're looking at the lower part. We have where we can pull from. There's multi-use trails. There's some in air quality, complete streets, and roadway improvements. So, you know, there's some HSIP funds there. There's $7 million SDBG funds. There's some CMAQ funds there. Although new roadways are not eligible for HSIP or CMAQ. But like I said, NDOT allows us some freedom in playing with these funding buckets, these targeted funding sources. So, like I said, I've got $7 million set aside for pavement rehab, SDBG, as well as, you know, and but we can pull more money from somewhere else if we need to. And then LaPorte County has I believe $2.1 million, and theirs is because they only have $2 million. We kind of put all that in one bucket and try to pull what we can from different sources. So then do we want to set an amount for roadway expansion or new roadways?
Charles, then that'll segue into another conversation you and I had earlier in the week. Because when you sort out the STBG projects that you listed in your table, to use my illustration again, and you sort the STBG projects you have in the table by score, we run at $40 million, and I know not all of it's going to go to STBG, right?
Right.
And
about $12 million in STBG.
So only one of the new projects would fall in there if they were all to be treated fairly strictly based on score. That's if the entire 40 million went to SDBG.
Right.
And then second, if you scored really high in another category and you're competing against another project just because you threw money at it and it was a subpar number, I mean, what's the equity in that too?
Right.
And being we don't have a lot of data, I think it just have to be a committee that you're going to fund one or two new projects and put them in the hopper as a effort to satisfy that urge or that need for those type of projects.
And then deal with that in the future.
Yeah, that's the only fair way, or it's the only logical way you could kind of do this in this round because you don't have enough information. That's just an idea, just a thought.
So you're suggesting then we don't tackle the big problem all at once, just say today that we are going to prioritize one or two projects.
From the new category?
Yes.
Yeah, I think it'd have to be, the simple way out to deal with this is to group the new projects together, evaluate them each on their own merit. Because these are more high dollar projects. I mean, $5 to $7 million you're talking each.
Right.
Would that be a palatable way? Otherwise, we're going to have to get down into the weeds. And I know everybody's got their interest and everybody wants their projects. And I wish we had $101 million.
Or even double what we had.
Exactly.
So I'm open to how to proceed.
Charles, this is Mark Odell. I like what Mike has been saying. My concern would be is the allocating the dollar amounts. I think that should be bumped from tier 3 to tier 2. I agree with that, but I'm one of the little guys. I guess I have a concern about the amount that we would allocate to the new roadway projects. So I would think that we would want to have a limit. If after you do what Mike said, resort them and analyze them. I mean, $5 to $7 million is a lot of money to take out of there. That's just my concern.
Mark, are you suggesting a percentage of the overall amount in the future, or how would we approach that?
Yeah, I mean, when you got the legacy, you know, you want to try to get them funded, as Tom was saying. But yeah, that's just, or if they can be phased. I mean, we've always talked about phasing projects and then you get them in the system.
But you're also taking off a smaller chunk. And we're not looking at as big of a chunk of roadway, but it's going to take a little bit longer to get the project done.
And Charles, wasn't there, what's the maximum limit an LPA could take in one year?
We really didn't set a maximum, but we did say that we kind of hinted that $6 million was the upper limit, I guess is the best way to say that. Because we did, the one programming rule we did put in was that anything over $6 million needed an extra question, an extra level of scrutiny by the top of the committee. So.
So based on my calculations, just looking at the table, if you took just the STBG projects and sorted them by score, they're all competing equally with each other. By the time you get to the first new project, you've already spent 28 million bucks. And so by my logic, that's just an STBG. You got to go into TA and some other pots, CMAC and HSIP. Those weren't factored into this. So the reality is that first new project is probably on the bubble or barely inside if you were to rate them straight up based on the money you got available in 2 years. Is that a fair assessment?
Well, if we look at just STBG fund projects, you know, and we definitely need to look at how the scoring affects these, and we'll look at the scoring next time.
But I guess my point being is if you get down just above the first new project, you've already spent 28 million bucks. That means you got 12 million left to scatter amongst the other funding categories and any other SDBG. That's my point.
That is if we funded all, that's if we funded all 4 of the projects.
No, I'm talking about all the STBG projects that got funded
above it.
Of the first new project. If you sort your list by score, you will have spent $28 million before you get to your first new roadway project. I took your table and sorted it out a different way. I could be wrong, but just for conversation's sake, knowing fully well you got to fund HSIP, CMAC, TA, 5307 maybe, or no, that's a different pot altogether. But my point being is the first new project's on the bubble anyway. It may not be funded. So maybe an approach would be,
well, if we spend 28 million, that would still get in a couple of projects, because that gives us another.
You still got to fund those other funding categories. There's no money yet in CMAC and HSIP and TA.
Right. So yeah, you're right. We're at 24 million and we're at 28 million.
So the way to do this, if we want to encourage new roadway construction, is what I propose. Should the 4, I think there's 4 in this list, or 3 in this list, because LaPorte County is in a different funding area. Is maybe they should be.
There's 4 actually on this list.
Okay.
2 in Cherville, Porter County, and St. John.
Well, isn't Cherville an expansion project, not a new roadway?
It is, but it's in the same. It's in the same.
I guess what I'm addressing is just the new roadway question, Charles.
Okay, then there's 2 questions. There's 2. Be Porter County and St. John.
Yep.
So,
So if you do the new roadway, I think the scoring system is a little bit unfair to the new roadway, but on the other hand, you know, how do we deal with that? Well, you don't have a mechanism to deal with that.
right.
So
And definitely that, like I said, we'll definitely be discussing that in the next year on how to deal with that.
But to get past today, could the T-Rock committee consider that we would pick one new roadway project and then work around that?
That is one outcome. So I don't know, if we want to go with pick one new roadway or one new roadway slash, and when I say new roadway, I'm talking about roadway expansion too. Pick one a year or something like that. And then kind of deal with the fallout after that.
Isn't roadway expansion and new roadway, they're kind of a little different. Roadway expansion is taking care of what you already had.
Yeah, but it falls into tier 3.
I understand the tier level. That's a separate question.
So, and the reason I'm throwing that in there because Cherville's project is actually a roadway expansion, which Kennedy Avenue is considered a roadway expansion. Even though one leg of it is, one phase of it is a new roadway. But they are in roadway expansion category. So,
If a capacity expansion project takes congestion off another roadway, why wouldn't that qualify for CMAQ funds?
I'm sorry, what was that question, Jeff?
If a capacity expansion project has an ancillary benefit of taking congestion off of another roadway, doesn't that qualify for CMAQ funds as well?
I think where it gets into the weeds is that and the reason it doesn't is because you're adding additional lanes. And so I think when you start adding additional lanes, they're looking at adding capacity. And while in the short term, it may relieve congestion, in the long term, it increases capacity and therefore increases congestion. That's my understanding how the feds look at it.
That's correct, Charles. Yes, that is exactly well stated.
Thank you, Joyce. Welcome. So that's where so Jeff, there you go.
Are there any growth factors to take into consideration with respect to that? Because the population is growing in certain areas, regardless of lane expansion. I think you experience the congestion regardless of, there could still be a net decrease in congestion with new lanes or new road segments.
I don't believe that's factored in there. Okay, So, so we're looking at moving these new roadways from tier 3 to tier 2. And we can do that later. Actually, we can do that at the next NOFA. If we go with what Mike Jabo is suggesting, and that is just for this NOFA and today and this NOFA, and is that we make a recommendation on funding 1 or 2 projects, 3 projects, if we want to count in LaPorte County. And make a recommendation on funding 1 or 2 of those projects, 1 or 2 of those phases of those projects. And then deal with the whole big question next time. Any questions, comments, motions?
What the heck? I'll make a motion, move tier 3 to tier 2 and give consideration for 1, 2, or as Charles said, 3 projects considering LaPorte.
Is there a second?
I'll second that. It's Kevin.
Okay. Discussion on that. So the question, I guess, then would be, which projects do we consider for, which projects do we consider
Do you think you need another meeting to pretty much classify or organize the roadways that we have that are petitioning right now? It just seemed to make sense to me that, okay, we made the first step. Now let's do another evaluation and decide what you're going to recommend from this point.
Okay. And so we would meet, have another working group meeting and discuss which ones we're going to recommend? Is that what you're saying, Kevin?
That's only a suggestion, if that's
okay.
what the group wants to do.
I have a question. This is AJ at the City of Gary. With moving the tier 3 into the tier 2, does that potentially knock out any projects that were seemingly going to be funded this NOFA? Do we have that analysis complete?
That would not necessarily knock out anything at all. That would just give them a higher priority. That would give these new roadways or roadway expansions a higher priority in their scoring. It gives them a better chance, but there is no funding allocated for this yet.
And as we discussed before, I look forward to the transportation department to come up with additional funding in the next couple of years, so we'll be prepared. So we have to be thinking in terms of the Fed coming through with a decent transportation bill. I'm optimistic.
So we would also be looking at garnering additional information from these 4 or 5 different projects. That would support.
That's all I was suggesting, to keep everything level and fair.
Okay. Okay. Any other discussion on that?
Charles, do we need to worry about a funding max right now, or can that be done at the next meeting for these projects? I mean, Bob's motion didn't have that in it, but I'm just for discussion. Is that something that, when would that be taken care of?
We could look at that really at any time. Kevin's suggesting we have another meeting and tackle that problem then.
Okay.
Yeah, looking at additional, and if we did that, keep in mind that we would have to pull money from somewhere. And whether it be from trails or complete streets or road rehab, the money would come from, or any other program, the money would come from somewhere. And since this is SDBG funds, we most likely would be pulling those from projects that would have SDBG. So, which means I wouldn't necessarily touch HSIP or CMAC or TA funds. I wouldn't touch those at all. I would just look at SD projects, at categories with SDBG funds.
Charles,
yes.
for these other project categories we're raising from 3 to 2, you know, they got to be judged amongst themselves on their own merits, I think, because I don't think there's no way you can compare them anywhere else. Is there a way Scott Weber can chime in with the model, at least give us some kind of indication of what the bang for the buck of the project is?
Yes, Mike, this is Scott. I did, in evaluating all of the new roadway expansion projects, I did look at, one of the questions was the reduction in vehicle hours traveled according to the model. So, I'd have to go back and look, and it would take me a little second to check in terms of, but that's just, just keep in mind that's one of the criteria that we asked for in our applications. If you want that criteria to maybe increase in value in terms of how this committee looks at the projects, I'd be happy to provide the information.
Okay. Is that what everybody's leaning toward, is having another meeting and discussing these projects on their own merits against each other?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I also agree. I understand all of the other communities putting a max on these, so.
Okay.
Hey, Charles, this is Joyce.
Yes.
I just still have to reiterate that your projects have to be committed to in your long-range plan and your air quality conformity. Otherwise, you guys are giving the federal agencies a false positive on your air quality analysis, and if the funding commitment isn't there. And so I just, and also that the projects are coming through the congestion management process. I just have to say that one more time before I retire here at the end of the month. But I just want to make sure you guys are aware, because you're going to get a new reviewer. And so I just heads up there.
Understood, Joyce.
I know it's tough choices and difficult, but I just want to keep that before you, because all right, that's it.
Right. Yeah, I think so. Whatever we did, we would need to run. Scott would need to run his analysis, his air quality analysis, and we probably would need to include then these or all of these projects in our long range plan, I would suggest, or actually the next time we did a long range plan amendment, we could include all of these projects.
Yes, Charles, that's my understanding, is that if any new roadway project that would be added would have to then be, it would have to go through air quality conformity, like Joyce just said, as well as our congestion management process, and it would essentially be an amendment to the NWI 2050 plan. We're already planning on processing an amendment on April 15th in front of the full commission. So at that meeting, we would also have to amend in all of these new roadway projects that we consider adding. And I guess then the question would also be, we could also add in those projects into the long range plan, even if we didn't identify funding in the TIP at the time as a prerequisite, or that we'd have to still look at, I guess. If we're optimistic that maybe the next funding bill would come through for us in a greater amount that might allow those projects to be funded. So that's something we'd have to look at.
Right.
In other words, Scott, you're saying we're pre-qualifying the projects?
Well, I'm hesitant to say. I mean, I in a sense, possibly, but I don't think it would be a wise idea to amend in a project into the plan if we couldn't identify the funding in a TIP at that time, because I mean, we might as well just wait and amend it into the plan when we could identify the funding, because that would also give the feds a false sense of what we're committing to, perhaps.
Yeah, and that would be wise. I think that's the direction Joyce has given us too, or has given us.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor that we move new roadways and roadway expansions from tier 3 to tier 2. And we would take a closer look at including one or two of these projects into this year's TIP. And that would be done at a different meeting. That is a note on that. Is that correct? Am I stating the amendment correctly?
I believe
Or
so.
three, if you can include Group 2 Port County.
And I'm sorry. Yes, it'd be three projects in LaPorte County. It'd be included in that. Thanks, Nick. So, Bob, did I restate your motion correctly?
Yes.
Any other discussion?
Call for the question.
Okay. Candace, do you want to take the vote?
Yes. I will call the same communities that responded if they were here for the roll call, and at the end I will ask if any others have joined the meeting. Lake County. Lake County. LaPorte County.
Yes.
Crown Point. Crown Point. Gary. Gary. Hammond.
Yes.
Hobart.
Yes.
Lake Station.
Station here.
City of LaPorte.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you, Sarah.
Michigan City.
Yes.
You have that, and you also have the flip side where I know for myself, every time I get something like a little jet,
Portage.
oh crap, here it is. You know, I had COVID.
Yes.
Valparaiso.
Yes.
Chesterton.
Yes.
Chesterton? Yes, okay,
Yes.
thank you. Griffith.
Yes.
Maryville. Cherville. Cherville. Winfield.
Yes.
Yes.
That was yes for Cherville and Winfield?
Yes. Yes for Winfield.
Yes for Cherville.
Okay, thank you. Has anybody else joined that will be voting that I did not call?
Porter County says yes.
Okay, thank you.
Crown Point says yes.
Thank you.
GPTC says yes.
I'm sorry?
Lake County says yes.
And GPTC says yes.
Okay.
All right. City of Gary says yes.
Valpo Transit says yes too.
Okay, thank you. All right. That's all I have, Charles. That concludes the roll call.
Looks like it is unanimous. We will move the tiers, new roadways and roadway expansions only from tier 3 to tier 2 for now. And then I will set up a meeting after the 1st of January, probably the first week or 2 of January, to discuss 5 projects and 5 projects only. Or should this be STC? Scott, that should deal with this.
Well, I mean, I think the next SEC meeting is scheduled on February the 5th, I believe. Sorry, February the 2nd. So, I mean, TBC would be the next project-related opportunity on January 12th.
Charles, could you do something in January so we keep this on track?
Yeah, I can do it, and I was thinking about doing it, but I guess my question was, should this go back to STC to figure this out? I don't want to overstep STC role, and I don't want T-Rock to overstep its roles either.
Yeah, why don't we have a discussion with Tom and see how it feels about it being on STC?
Okay.
I mean, I think I would agree with that. I think that's okay to discuss it with Tom as the chair to see if there would be willingness to maybe move a meeting up into January or.
Tom, if we need to, we can move up the meeting up until January.
Okay. So then STC will meet to discuss these 5 projects.
Thank you, Tom.
And rate them and come up with a recommendation of 1 or 2 or 3 projects, one being in LaPorte County. And in Lake and Porter County, 1 or 2 projects. Recommend one of those to be funded those 1 or 2 or 3 projects to be funded in this NOFA. Okay?
Possibly we could schedule that meeting maybe January 5th, which is exactly which is our normal meeting day, normally when we have a meeting on morning at 9 a.m.
Yeah, I think
If that
I
meets your
missed
schedule,
Jeff.
Scott.
Yeah, that we could process that, Thomas. That's yes, we could make that happen.
It's happening sooner rather than later.
Yeah, it's better to get it happening sooner than later.
Okay.
Okay, so the SEC committee will meet at 9 a.m. on January 5th to discuss these projects and come up with a recommendation.
Okay.
Okay. That is all the business I have for this meeting. Is there any other business that someone feels needs to be brought up?
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Yeah, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, Happy New Year.
Happy
Be
holidays.
safe.
Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to all of you. Stay safe.
Yeah, Merry Christmas and stay safe.
So if there's no more new business, then I would like a motion to leave the meeting, to end the meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying Merry Christmas.
Merry
Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Thank you all.
The holidays, the